I was attending a dinner party last night, and everybody was asking me, "What's your Sunday lesson all about?" And when I expressed and explained what it was, and I shared it, I shared it indicated that I was going to share this out of the frustration that I've been experiencing with the divisiveness within our nation, within our community, and within who we are. And so this is kind of a difficult topic, I think, to talk about this morning. But the lesson's title is Multiple Belongings. Anybody want to take a guess what multiple belongings means? Yes, absolutely. Gosh. Multiple belongings, simply as put, is when we belong to two or more groups and have allegiance to both of those groups in our life. And sometimes that creates conflict within us because we care for both groups, both individuals, or the beliefs that they have and that they support in life. This can cause an inner struggle within us, and just how we support someone we care about and yet not support their belief. How do we do that? For example, you have a very near and dear friend that you've had for a very, very long time, and you love them dearly. However, they are from a church whose beliefs are opposite from ours. And the friend regularly reminds you you won't make it into heaven without Jesus in your heart. And yet we know from our experience with Ernest Holmes that he was steeped in the teachings of Jesus. That is multiple belonging. You're very happy here at the Center for Spiritual Living, as well as you love this friend of over 30 years, and yet you are on the opposite ends of the spectrum religiously. Or how about a family member that you usually celebrate the holidays with, who is refusing to wear a mask or be inoculated? You dearly love this family member. After all, as kids you played together. You were in each other's weddings, and yet now you feel uncomfortable in their presence. And you're just not quite sure whether you want to spend the holidays with them once again. This, too, is multiple belongings. You love your cousin, and yet you're in conflict about being with them. For the last 4 or 5 years, America has seemed to live in what I call turmoil. It's the Republicans versus the Democrats. Some believe it's COVID is a very serious disease and we must isolate, versus this is not a challenge at all. We don't need to wear masks. We don't need to be isolated. After all, it's going to be over in just a few months. We need only watch the committee hearings, any committee hearing in Washington, D.C., to see how split our country and beliefs are. Are any of you as frustrated as I am about what is happening in our communities, our country? Hey, everybody says. Maybe you've had similar experiences like I expressed in the Sunday lesson here with friends or family members. Recently, I returned from a 2-week vacation in Washington and Idaho, and I got to tell you, it was a wonderful trip. It was wonderful being out of the heat here in Chico. And I was able to spend extended time with several friends who I had not seen for many years. It was interesting, however, to see the difference between the states as well as the diversity just within those states. In Western Washington, for example, everyone followed the state mandate that inside of a building you had to have a mask on. Now, Eastern Washington, which tends to be more rural, this was not necessarily so. In Western Washington, the support in signs and flags was very obviously liberal. In Eastern, as well as Northeast Oregon, there were still signs and flags up supporting our previous president. I discovered in Idaho that for the most part was very much conservative, and for the most part against the mandates for masks and inoculation, as well as the fact that they wore T-shirts, signs, and bumper stickers that also freely expressed the support of the Second Amendment. I'm not used to seeing that here. When I arrived in Idaho, I was staying with a very close friend of 16 years. I knew before I arrived that she had not been vaccinated and was opposed or what actually was very conservative politically. And so I wanted the week or the 3-4 days that we were to spend together to be fun, to be enjoyable, to be pleasurable. And so I prayed about it before I arrived. I really wanted to spend this special time with her. I prayed for guidance. I prayed for understanding. I prayed for my own willingness to listen and to be open. And I prayed that the Christ in me would guide me through this journey. You see, this visit, as I noted, was very important. We hadn't spent any quality time with each other for over 6 years since my father had passed. Much had changed for both of us in our lives. And I was determined that our political perspectives and belief about COVID would not get in the way of our time that we would spend together. So let me tell you up front, it was a wonderful time that we had. And I'll tell you a little bit later how we did that. We must remember that no two people ever believe exactly the same thing. We will not always agree with everyone. We tend to cling to our beliefs, believing that they are right and the other people are wrong. We hear someone who supports not wearing masks or no vaccine or a political candidate that is not of our liking. We often refer to them as dumb as stupid. Just stop and think about what has gone through your thoughts and the process that when you have come face to face with someone who believes differently than you do. Maybe instead of the sounds of silence running through your head, you heard, "That guy's nuts." Or how about, "How stupid can they be?" Or, "I hope they get sick because they didn't take the vaccine." Have any of those thoughts crossed your mind? Or maybe some that are very similar to that. Or maybe someone near you said one of those kinds of statements. When we attack another's belief or behavior that is different from ours, we're attacking their identity or their belonging. Typically, that only heightens or increases their need to defend their beliefs and belonging to a greater degree. What difference does it make that you might think? After all, my beliefs are the right ones, aren't they? If we don't put an end to all of this controversy, if we don't stop our fear of the future, if we don't come and to embrace the healing power of love, our nation, our community, our families, and our friends will continue to be divided. Relationships will wither and go by the wayside. Families will be torn apart. And remember, we all have allegiances to multiple groups. And just what happens when we attack a group or an individual, they become like a mother bear protecting their baby cubs. They're not going to accept it. And in the example of a family member, they belong to your family, and yet they also belong to the group that believes and supports how they believe. For example, maybe you have a friend who believes that abortion should be eliminated. Can you see that when you may criticize that your cousin or your friend who has that belief you are challenging their loyalty not only to their family or you as a friend, but also to their beliefs? In essence, you're questioning their loyalty completely. Being in your family grouping is out of sync, or being your friend is out of sync with what this individual believes personally. They view your beliefs as a direct attack not only on them personally, but on their belief. Ernest Holmes, our founder, talks about belonging in another context. Everyone automatically is attracted to himself just what he is. However intolerable the situation may be, we are just where we belong. There is no power in the universe but ourselves that can free us. Someone may help us on the road to realization, but substantiality and permanence can come only through the consciousness of our own life and thoughts. We are where we're supposed to be. Holmes calls it the law of attraction. So if we're called to this place of discomfort or opposite beliefs, exactly what should we do? First, we must try to feel empathy for the other individual, especially for the fact that the family member or friend has loyalties not only to you, but also to their beliefs. As difficult as it may seem, remember that you too feel uncomfortable. Yet you are personally experiencing that tension between both of you. Where does that tension come from? Our own personal pain, our own personal fear, as well as our own anger. The second thing you must do is to stop criticizing the other person's beliefs. Every criticism that we utter is an attack to them personally. Remember how you have felt when others criticized you? Place yourself in their position. Every criticism stated will bring a defensive response from the other individual. That's when we get into that game of words and nobody wins. There is no compromise. There's no walking away without feelings being hurt. The third thing that we must attempt to do is to show genuine curiosity. That doesn't mean asking questions like, how can an intelligent person like you believe such a ridiculous thing? It's about asking questions that are not threatening and that show us that we have an openness to hear what someone else is sharing. For example, you might want to say, tell me what's so important about a given topic. I'm curious. I really want to understand your perspective. Expressing empathy and curiosity will help you get to that place of understanding the other person's viewpoint. It doesn't mean that you have to like what the other person is saying. It means, however, that you will listen. When I asked my friend in Boise why she had chosen not to be vaccinated, I was truly surprised by her response. I had no idea that she had allergies, that the inoculation would make real health challenges for her if she took it. If I had not been curious, without judgment, our time together could have been a disaster or ended sooner than I wanted. It is important that we stay away from arguments or challenge the individual with statements like, but don't you know that 95 to 99% of the people who wear masks don't get diseases? Avoid creating questions that set up a gotcha session. We're all vulnerable regarding our belongings and our beliefs. The goal is to show genuine curiosity so you can truly understand where the individual is coming from and why their beliefs are so important to them. It's only through our understanding why we believe what we do that we can ultimately come together on common ground. Lao Tzu, over 2,500 years ago, stated, "The hard and stiff will be broken. The soft and subtle will prevail. Whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life." So we're often asked to be soft in order to prevail. Remember, it takes more courage not to resist than it does to resist. By being curious and open to understand, is a way of understanding the pain in the other person as well as ourselves. It is about neither accepting nor rejecting anything, but rather an openness to learning and finding common ground with another person. It's about releasing our fears and the fears of powerlessness and the feeling that we have lost control. Unfortunately, our pride sometimes gets stuck in the wrong place and we resist hearing what the other person has to share. Thich Nhat Hanh stated, "If you tell me you already understand, I feel a little pessimistic. If you say you do not understand, I feel optimistic." I always get upset when people tell me, "Oh, I know how you feel." Or they might say, "I know exactly what you mean." Nobody knows how I feel or what I mean because they don't live inside of me. It upset me the most when my dad died and people would tell me how sorry they were and they knew exactly how I felt. The result was my anger would rise because nobody knew how I felt. Our task is to be curious, truly listen and understand, and then be who we are with the other individual. Without being real and open with others, there will never ever be a bond with them. I cannot have truth and love in my life if I'm unable to face my own fears and my own pain. I cannot know truth and love of anyone if I keep projecting my fears, my pain on anyone else. COVID and politics in America has truly opened up a can of worms. The label on the outside of that can says pain and fear. And over the last 5 to 6 years, we have truly come to face to face with our own pain and our own fears. In the Book of Awakenings by Mark Nepo, he writes, "I envy the tree, how it reaches but never holds." And a tree is constantly growing upward and outward, and yet every fall it loses its leaves, part of its very natural beauty. It never clings to those leaves, and the tree gently lets them go. It accepts the change. Instinctively, that tree knows that the loss of the leaves is not just about change, but it's also about newness and growth. We, however, often resist change and loss. We cling to those things that we are uncomfortable with when they may not be good for us. We hang on to outdated beliefs that have served their usefulness in our life. It took me 6 or 7 years to come back to this very spiritual community after my first visit. And why? Because I could not let go of old beliefs that no longer served me. Now I look back at that time that I lost in study and growth and new understanding because I was so rigid and I could not accept change. Often I shake my head at the time I lost in spiritual healing and growth. So just what can we do as individuals to ease the pain and fear and move through and on through the challenges? We can't heal others, only we can heal ourselves. We can't change others, we can only change ourselves. And what that means is that each of us has a willingness to open to others and their beliefs, even when they're contrary to ours. That doesn't mean you have to stop wearing a mask, not get vaccinated, or switch your political party. What it does mean is that you're willing to do the inner work and the healing rather than blaming, staying angry, or living out your fears. Repeating the statement, "I accept you and bless you," goes a long way to release our anger and our fears towards somebody else. When someone begins to state beliefs that are contrary to mine, I often find myself mentally saying, "I accept you and I bless you, because after all, what I'm putting out will be returned. Enter conversations with people who believe differently with that sense of curiosity and openness to truly listen. Let go of judgment and that sense of feeling that I'm right and you're wrong. There's plenty of wars out there that have been fought over the issue of who's right and who's wrong. Remember that you receive what you believe. If you keep believing that everyone who has an opposing viewpoint is wrong and crazy, guess what you're going to continue to attract into your life? Good luck. As Lloyd Strom puts it, a belief is a deeply suppressed emotional impulse that expresses itself unconsciously through us in order to produce experiences in our life. And those experiences rise up for us to heal. I talked briefly about raising and praising. When I can, I verbally say it out loud. Simply, I praise you, Tom. I raise you, Tom, in the name of love. Because that's what I choose to put out, is love. For me, it goes a long way to release the tension I might feel and remember that the other person has a right to their beliefs and their perspective. Often we find ourselves in an increasingly smaller world. Unfortunately, that world is sometimes filled with anger and hate and fear. Most of us do not want to live that way. We must remember that old adages that what you put out is what comes back. It's the law of attraction. If we continue to cling to our beliefs without a willingness to listen, possibly even change, then our world will continue to be a place of frustration, hate, anger, and us versus them. Just imagine, however, how dull the world would be if we all believed and acted exactly the same. Never would anything be created, there would never be newness, and life would be pretty dang dull. So being different or having opposing ideas and beliefs forces us to look within and to grow. It is time for all of us to return to the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We can do that by observing how we speak, how we act, and how we think about the other person, their political party, or any difficult situation. Then we have to ask ourselves, is this how I want people to speak and think about me, what I just thought about them? If we want others to believe and to think of us as wise, caring, and loving, then we must act, think, and speak with wisdom, kindness, and love. This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours, and so it is.